I want to tell you about Jeremiah. Jeremiah is a serial entrepreneur. As you will find, he has had his fingers in many, 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 many different pies over the last 20 years. He's done lots of interesting things. He's spearheaded lots of successful ventures. And a few months, a good friend of mine, Kevin Thompson, sent me an interview he did with Jeremiah. And there was a little piece of the interview where they were talking. Kevin said something like, "So, who are the most influential people in your business career?" And one of the people that Jeremiah talked about was me. And then he proceeded to explain a lot of things that he learned, and he explained them in a very good way. And I said, Jeremiah would be a great person to bring on a new Renaissance webinar because a lot of people will be able to identify with his story. And I think Jeremiah has traveled further with a lot of these principles than many other people have. And so I reached out to Jeremiah and I just said, I would like you to come on a webinar, and frankly, you could talk about anything you want to talk about. I just want to hear your story, and I want you to wrap it around, like, if you can wrap some bacon around the principles and the concepts that keep serving you over and over, and how you deploy those in different situations. And so he made some slides. I said, well, if you need the slides, use them, but or if you don't, I just want to hear your story. So Jeremiah Baker, welcome. Glad you're
Thank you,
here.
Perry. I appreciate you. And before we got on the call, I said, I know you're not single, but I'm going to flatter you. One, thank you for having me. Yes, Kevin Thompson is amazing. He had me on his podcast, Million Dollar Relationships, and he asked me, "Hey, who is someone that inspired you or really helped you in your career?" And to be very, very blunt, I always say my parents, and I'll share a little bit about that because they're tremendous people and they've done a lot of good in the world and instilled that in us kids. But I was thinking business wise, I'm like, oh my gosh, you big dummy, Perry Marshall. So in 2004, Perry, I bought your book, Definitive Guide to Google AdWords, and I downloaded it because I was helping an e-commerce site around the Christmas time of 2004 to one, I physically built the site to sell educational computer toys that they had kind of purchased the rights to from, I believe it was Intel. And Intel didn't want the line anymore, so we took it and we were selling the toys. And I said, we got to use AdWords. And I heard of this guy, Perry. I think I may have heard from you about you from Jay Abraham or someone of that nature. So I was sitting in a one bedroom apartment north of Atlanta. I think it was like $500 a month or something on an old laptop, building the site, and then we launched the AdWords campaign on a Friday. I had the cord running. This before Wi-Fi, I think, and I had the cord running to my laptop in my living room. And I opened it up Saturday morning, and I'm like, wait, what the heck is this? I'd never really had this experience, but the site had generated $16,500 or something overnight. And I'm like,
That's
this
awesome.
can't be real. I'm like, look, who do I call? I have my flip phone out. Like, I gotta call, like, I gotta do something about this. Like, I'm running around my apartment, and a few days pass, and I'm like, I think this is going to change the world. This is tremendous. And I immediately wrote you a testimonial back in holiday of 2004 around Christmas, and I was hooked. And then what I did from there, and I will share a few slides, and please interrupt me. I just want to overwhelm with as much value as I can. And I will say this, if we don't have enough time today, I'm happy to speak with anyone, share anything. I have a lot to share because it's been 21 years that I've been following everything that you've taught, Perry, from you can see how tagged this AdWords book is. Your 80/20. I
Mm,
have the cheat sheet here on the wall. This is the white paper course. I used to work for a company called Knowledge Storm Tech Target.
mm.
And then, of course, as Kyler mentioned, this is all the stack of, and this has a stack of the newsletters. So what I've been doing is applying what you've taught, very just dove in, heads in. I gotta get out of this one bedroom apartment. I want to buy a house and I got to do all this stuff, right? So I did that and more. And I want to share with you, coming kind of full circle. It is a bit of a unique story because everything started with AdWords, but my life has expanded in ways that I never could have imagined even, I mean, there's no way I would have imagined these things that could have happened back in 2004. And I'm looking at your cheat sheet here on my wall with from the 80/20 book, and it says the expanding universe theory. And I think that really encapsulates really everything that I've been able to accomplish from your teachings. And I just got to thank you for how consistent and persistent you've been with really teaching strong, tangible things that we can all use. So if it's okay, I'll jump into it and stop me at any point because I'm going to try to I have just a few slides with pictures and things I want to share so that folks could get an idea of what I've been able to do from your gracious teaching. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in slideshow mode, and you can see everything okay, Perry?
Yeah, it's
Okay, great. So basically, I'm going to give an example here of how we built a cybersecurity business, an ethical hacking business, hired to hack into banks, casinos, hospitals, government organizations, universities, software companies, credit unions, and so forth before the bad guys do it. Now, Kyler, before I got on here, asked me, was I a bad hacker? And that's how I got into this because I got caught or something, kind of like Catch Me If You Can or any of those movies. And I said, no, I actually got into this industry because of the work that I did due to Perry's teachings. I, um, I was actually fired at 29, even though I was a top salesperson in my company. At the time, I didn't know it. They were looking to sell the business, so they were getting rid of a lot of folks. And I went on to be a growth consultant, helping business to business enterprise technology companies. So that's how I got into cyber. And I'd like to get right into it and share how we were able to really grow the business using everything and I know many of you have read Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords, you've 80/20, sales and marketing, and all of the great teachings that Perry has. But this is an example of using those teachings and the results that we got. So I hope that this is useful for everyone. So 2003, 2004, over 20 years ago, came across Perry. Thank you. Glad that I did. Built an e-commerce site, like I mentioned earlier. We did over $300,000 in the first 7 weeks. I was hooked, wrote the testimonial to Perry, and couldn't be more grateful. As I said, top salesperson at a company. I was brought in to turn around a division that they could not get to sell, the product line, service line to sell for 2.5 years. They plopped me on a phone in a conference room and said, get after it. And it was a big technology company. And I'm at that time 27, 28 years old, no real training, just used some of the training that my father taught me in his mechanic business. And I started diagnosing their situation with their AdWords campaigns. And we ended up winning that company as a client a few weeks later, and that really we went on a ripper after that. So 60 deals closed in our first 8 months. They sent me all over the country to teach sales and how am I doing it, and they can't believe that we're able to do this. And honestly, it's just using diagnostic based questioning and selling, and giving a really good offer in alignment with the things that Perry teaches about creating great offers. So we sold into 60 enterprise accounts and created a big book of recurring business. That company ended up selling for about 58, $59 million as a result of a lot of this effort. So it was pretty cool event. But I got fired. So turning point, I said, I'm not going back to all this. I had 11 consulting jobs in my first 7 years out of college. And I said, entrepreneurship's the only option. I want to take what we've done here and I want to help others. And I also want to help myself get out of the apartment and be able to build real tangible, demonstrable businesses by getting leads from AdWords, converting them to sales, creating recurring revenue models and machines and things like that, just to create a better life for me and for my clients. And everything was really on a guaranteed basis. So I had to perform. I didn't really have a lot of options and I was bootstrapping. So these stories in here, just know that there was no funding or anything like that. This is all real grit. So before I go into this, I'd just like to share, like going back to the Kevin Thompson podcast, who inspired you? Perry, you did unbelievably. I can never thank you enough, or maybe I can, I don't know. But my parents helped raise 56 foster children over the years. And 4 years ago, my mother had passed, but she did some tremendous things in her life. Not only was she the oldest of 11 children, she didn't graduate from high school for various reasons. She was raising her family, her brothers and sisters. But over the years, they realized they at the time they couldn't have children. They lost a few children at birth and decided to foster. They fostered my two older sisters, about 10 and 7 years older than me. They're half sisters. Their mother died in a house fire. So they were put into the foster care system in upstate New York. Well, my parents said, we got to take these kids in. Eventually, shortly after they adopted them, a few years later, I came around. There's me with the Here Comes Trouble shirt. My aunt made that shirt for me, very suitable for my personality type. I do not sit still. I still don't. So they raised all the foster kids. I came along 7 or so years later with the same illness that I would have had an older brother, and he had the same breathing difficulties and illness that I was born with, but I made it, as we can see. So I'm currently working on a book to represent all the work that my parents did. And not only did they raise 56 foster children in our little 3 bedroom, 1 bath home, they became entrepreneurs in the multifamily real estate, mechanic business, and hair salon business. And we even had a deli at one point. So they became entrepreneurs. This is the first hotel that they bought, and I'm going to move along pretty quickly just to be conscious of everyone's time. This is a railside hotel in upstate New York. Somehow it had the last name of Baker, which is my last name, before we even bought it. It was a hotel that folks would stay in. It was built in the 1800s, I believe. So they converted it into an 8-unit apartment building with a hair salon on the first floor. There's another photo of it. And that was my introduction to entrepreneurship. I was about 5 years old, and my parents said, we got to make more money to support all these kids because my parents weren't making very much money at the time with not even a high school diploma, neither of them. So they were doing everything they could to bootstrap this thing and get it off the ground for all of us. So my mom, that's around her 40th birthday, many, many moons ago, she started Baker Apartments with a beauty shop, handmade sign out front to dive into entrepreneurship at a young age. And that's me and my younger brother, Cassidy, helping mom clean up one day after school. So we got to be in the service business from a very young age. I grabbed onto it. I love it. My father was a mechanic. He brought us up in a garage. I know it looks rough, but it was one of the best learning grounds and apprenticeships that I've ever had. And seeing, clients come in, you diagnose the problem, price and labor, labor and quote and time and all that. And then they leave and hopefully they return. And my father built one hell of a business without ever running a single ad. Our driveway was filled with cars my entire life just because he did good, honest work, and he actually fixed people's problems. And he said that the only thing I can't fix, he's actually here with me today, sitting in my living room. He just turned 82, and I'm taking him to a talk over in Nashville for Moody's Investments. It'll be about 700 people there, so it's going to be insane. But he says the only thing I can't fix is a broken heart. So that's my dad's line. So in college, just to set a little bit of the stage here before I get into the specifics, I was the first to go to college in my family. My parents were very gracious, and we worked really hard to be able to do that. That's me starting my first business during the dot-com era, which was building websites. And the first client I had was the National Soccer Hall of Fame in Oneonta, New York, and had a bunch of pharmaceutical clients and all that, just working from the dorm room aggressively to do anything to grow a business. And that was about the second year into college. I was studying pre-med at the time, but I couldn't shake this entrepreneurship thing. I saw this dot-com era coming along, and I just had to do something about it. So I still laugh at the passion for fashion that I had back then. So this brings us to today. Today, again, thank you, Perry. I can't thank you enough. 18 years of being hired to hack into banks, casinos, hospitals, corporations, software companies, and we built this really from zero. The cybersecurity company was one of my first clients, maybe second or third at the time. And I came in to help them use Google AdWords. And that's why this book is so tattered and kind of the pages don't stick together. Perry's book, Definitive Guide, Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords. We use that as a starting point to bring in clients. And in his book, he mentioned something called the expanding universe theory, which is to start. And Perry, I'm sorry if I muddy this all up, just stop me. But start with Google Ads, paid search, then use email to nurture leads along after you've captured them, then SEO, partners/affiliates, and then media. We literally just said we are going to stick to this strategy and we're going to get the flywheel moving, the economic engine in the business running. And that's what we did. So kind of a land and expand model. And I'll tell you, it was not easy. For the first 2 years, I probably made 50 grand a year at most, working around the clock to get this engine running. This is a piece of paper that I stuck on my wall with this piece of black duct tape that was in my office here. I took it down to take a picture of it for this, but I just wrote this. So I said, don't get distracted. Stick to getting customers. Get them to repeat, grow them through additional add-on sales and so forth, multiply them through referrals and and other partners. And then the dollar signs really is profitability. So that's the constant. Try to consistently optimize to be more profitable. And I made sure that we held our blinders on for getting these clients that were hiring us to hack into their organization before the bad guys do it, so that they can find their vulnerabilities. And it's a known industry. Some folks do it just because they don't want to be vulnerable, but there are industries like PCI and HIPAA in the medical space, and PCI's payment card industry. Anyone that's accepting credit cards, like large retailers and so forth, they have to do it as part of a compliance structure. So in Perry's book, the reason that I got into this is because this particular business met the model that Perry had talked about in Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords, where are there enough people, buyers searching every month? And I looked for words where people were searching for our phrases, plus words like company, vendor, quote, buyer modifiers. And then are enough of them searching per month, 25, 20,000, 30,000 searches a month? And the answer was yes. And then the last bit was, is each sale worth quite a bit? And each sale was worth quite a bit. I think it was about $18,000 to $20,000 on average per client in the beginning. So all of the ingredients kind of lined up, and that's why I jumped in. I knew we could get clients from AdWords. We just had to get in there and do the work. So phase one to the expanding universe theory, paid search, that's the big bang. Get Google Ads to drive in initial leads. That's exactly what we did. We bought a handful of keywords and key phrases, and we drove them to, and this is a bit of a unique thing that I hope is useful to you folks on the call, because this is not something that I knew out of the gate. I had to learn this. So a lot of people were running ads. We've been in business forever. We're the greatest. We're the best. I said, no, I want to switch. It's something I call context switching. I want to understand what the context is, and then do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. So we created I call it a buyer beware guide. And I've used this document across all kinds of industries, and it worked extremely well to this day, because human psychology doesn't change, in my opinion. It's just the technology changes, tools change, things like that. So what we did is basically, and I'll show you an example of the ad in a few minutes, so hopefully you can test it in your business as well. But buyer beware guide was the offer in the ad copy, not how great we were, or how many clients we had, or anything like that. It's don't buy before you download this free guide. So it outperformed traditional vendor messaging. We were up against like Dell and IBM and all these giant companies. And I noticed that we were starting to siphon business away from them with this unique AdWords strategy. So what we did is here's an example of an ad. I just put this together the other day for you. So it's not an actual ad, but it's the copy. So basically ran an ad from day one, ask these 12 questions or some number before you hire anyone. And it's a fear of loss, curiosity kind of concept that people just couldn't resist clicking, especially when they're searching for things like ethical hacking, quote, ethical hacking vendor. They don't want to make the wrong choice, especially in this high sensitivity industry. And then what we did is we drove them to a landing page, not the exact landing page, but this gives you the idea. Where the guide would be directly on the page. They would just give their full name, their company, and their email address. That's all we asked for. And the whole idea was to get them in and indoctrinate them on these 12 questions. So the 12 questions are designed so that the other people in the space, the competition, would not have good answers to these. We were trying to find out where other vendors might be doing something wrong and or putting the client in potential danger, and then allowing the searcher to ask questions that if they didn't get good answers to, they would want to run away. And one interesting thing that happened out of all this that really inspired me was when I would get on a call with a new lead that came in and they wanted to talk to us, they would say like, yeah, we talked to all these other people, but they didn't do this, this, and this. And they were quoting stuff from the guide. And then a second thing that would happen that was quite interesting is people would download the guide, and then within 20 minutes later, there was another link inside the guide for a quote request. We get a secondary email for a quote request that would come in, and it became a pattern. Guide, a few minutes later, quote request. So it created this steady inbound lead machine that had very serious buyers on the back end of it. And then we would, of course, get on the phone with them and walk them through our process. So we also used part of Pear's expanding universe theory is we used email marketing to nurture those along that got the guide that did not request a quote right away, and pretty much everyone that came in and filled out the form. So the idea was to give them case studies, news, announcements, really useful information over a period of time as Perry teaches in his multi-day email courses and things that he has offered and taught us. And this worked extremely well for that portion of the market that was not ready to buy right away, which is the majority, as we all know. So we carefully sent steady flow of valuable content over time via email, and this worked tremendously well. Next, we went into the next part of the expanding universe theory in Perry's 80/20 book is SEO growth. So what we did is we focused on those buyer key phrases that we learned from our paid ads, our Google ads, and we started implementing them into our blog posts, on our website, on our homepage, and so forth. And eventually we went from obscurity, like we weren't anywhere in Google for those terms organically. And one day, and I'll share with you how this magic happened. It was pretty surprising. We went from nowhere to the top 3 spots for our buyer key phrases, and it just went crazy. A major spike in traffic at those, at the top spots. It just absorbs or sends you a lot more traffic than you could ever get otherwise. And I didn't know this. That was a discovery through experience. And I'll just go back one and share a little bit about how that happened. And I'll share more about how that happened in detail, and hopefully it's valuable to you all. It happened because we were able to get earned media. We were in the press, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Economist, Vice, Gizmodo, Wired, a whole bunch of anyone you can imagine. And what they were doing is linking back to our website. And within some time, that transferred so much authority from the backlinking that our organic listings as well went up. And it was almost overnight that we went from nowhere to the top of the first page of Google, which was tremendous for our business. And it stayed that way for years and years and years. So phase 4 of Perry's formula, we went to partners and referrals, again, sticking to that piece of paper that I had on my wall. Client referral system. We wanted our best clients to refer non-competitive people just like them to us, because we all know that referrals close faster, they spend more, there's less friction. It's really amazing. And we had no referrals before this. So we made a point to implement it in our system of our marketing machine and sales lead generation machine. Then we also reached out to partners with complementary firms. They were doing stuff in our space, but it wasn't exactly the same service as us. And the way that this happened is one came to us and said, "Hey, I'd like to work with you. I need a quote. I do like disaster recovery planning, which is another service in the cybersecurity space for hospitals and insurance firms." So, and this was a gentleman down in Puerto Rico. So I said, "Okay, great. Let's do that. And then let's go find other people with that same kind of situation." And I'm moving really, really fast because I want to get through everything, and I keep tapping my phone to make sure that I stay on track from a timing perspective. But the complementary firms started to become like clockwork, almost like our ads, Google ads, and our SEO, where it started to really feed the machine from a referral perspective, where I would see their phone calls coming in all the time. And I was on the front end of all the calls, especially in the beginning, because we were bootstrapping and I ran all of our sales and marketing. So we looked for folks that were a natural fit before and after their services, where we could kind of jump in there and become a value add to them. They liked it because we were bringing them revenue that they otherwise wouldn't have, and vice versa. So we had that machine going, the AdWords machine going, the SEO machine going. And mind you, this is all over several years. So we didn't just launch this right away. This is a progressive stack kind of situation. So this is the part that was really quite exciting, and I'd never had any experience in this, which is the power of getting in the media. Well, one, we started with an agency. So we worked with a PR agency. We spent about $15,000, and we worked month after month, and we didn't get anything. Nothing happened. And I felt kind of frustrated because I kept seeing other exciting cybersecurity stories of people getting breached or broken into or hacked or whatever it may be. And they're showing up in the news. And I'm like, why not us? So we put our heads down, and I would spend all my time toiling, like, how are we going to crack the code on this PR thing? So what we did, and this is something that I recommend everyone do because it does work. It just takes work, strategy, and time, effort. So what we did is we said, okay, look, the PR agency didn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our case studies of how we either hacked into a bank, a casino. I think one of our first articles was I don't have it here, but it was a wired mouse back in the day, and we put a piece of hardware inside the mouse, sent it to a client that was being difficult, not letting us do our normal process, and we wrapped it up back in the retail packaging and sent it as a gift. Well, the device that was hardwired inside the mouse was designed to call back home once it got plugged in. And it did exactly that about 3 or 4 days after we sent it. And then we called home and we called the client and said, hey, look, we actually got into your network and we have control because it was someone that had administrative rights that plugged this free gift into their computer. Well, we anonymized that so that there was no client names or anything mentioned, wrote it up, put it out on our blog, and then pushed it to Twitter at the time, X, and a journalist picked it up. And that journalist was pretty prolific and ended up becoming a partner that said, hey, anytime you do stuff like this, share it because I need that kind of stuff for my job. So we created this relationship with the press, with starting with one article, really cool. It had suspense, it had stakes, it had surprise, a little bit of humor in there, and it was just a really good story that giving the press what they wanted. Not what we wanted, how great we are, anything like that, but just tell a really cool, interesting Mission Impossible story. So we did that. And then we ended up getting coverage in the New York Times, Wired, Economist, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. Gizmodo came and filmed. I'll share some stuff on that. They came and filmed a little mini documentary about us, as did Vice. We were in the Wall Street Journal, and many, many more. And again, it's exciting because all of this comes from the teachings that Perry has been so graciously giving to all of us. And in these books that cost $15 or whatever it may be, it's insane. And Perry, I think you're crazy for doing that, but thank you. So that's just an example. And then here's me sitting here on the right as Gizmodo was filming us. We were talking about kind of snake oil in the cybersecurity space and how there's a small group of people doing real work and a lot of people just trying to, kind of take our money. And that was really quite exciting when they called and said, we're going to send the crew to do that. And that really helped us out quite a bit as a business from a trust and a proof perspective, because you can never have enough proof when it comes to trust. So here's another thing that I'm very, very excited about. This changed our life like overnight. It was insane because, as you imagine, we're all working on our own credit cards and our own wallets to grow this business. And it's very stressful, as many of you know how that is, especially when you have staff. I think we had 35 engineers working with us at the time. It was insane every single day. So what we did is we had a problem. Many of you might be suffering from this right now, where it's episodic projects, client churn, constantly hunting for new clients. Not fun at all. And I knew that from the beginning. And we were trying to add recurring revenue models to our business, but nothing would stick. The clients didn't want scanning. They didn't want this. They didn't want that. And then one day I was reading a book from a gentleman that many of you know. And I think I learned about this person from Perry, Dan Kennedy. And good old Dan was talking about a plastic injection molding business and how they had this same problem where they would give a quote and only 20% or so would buy. But there was a lot of cost into developing the quote, and they had to build these molds and all these kind of things, and the company was losing money. He came in to do a turnaround job to get the company back up and running, and he said, "We're not doing those free quotes anymore. We're going to charge for them." And I know you guys are going to complain and moan about this because you think everyone's going to run away, but just try it for 90 days or something like that and let's see what happens. Well, that was on a Sunday afternoon. I was reading the book actually sitting down reading it in my armchair, and I was like, "Oh, this is it. Eureka, this is what we need to do." So what we did is we went from giving quotes away for free to charging a deposit. And if the clients didn't want to do it, great. They weren't serious. It's a good kind of filter. If you follow Perry, he talks about the five power disqualifiers. It's a very good velvet rope technique to use. Instead of giving away free quotes, do something of value, charge a deposit that's refundable, as Dan did in his book. And then if the client ends up working with you, you just chop that deposit off or give it back to them, refund or whatever. It accomplished a lot of magic. So what it did is it helped us to get folks in by charging the deposit for the proposal, and they would get a report that showed them what they looked like to hackers and stuff like that. And nobody else was doing this. They were just throwing quotes over the fence, and it was very not good, not ethical for the client. And then that allowed us to get in the door. So our win rate went from, I think it was right around 20% to 70, 90% at times, because anyone that paid that deposit, they were in, they were bought into the way that we do things. And then we would review the proposal with them once we're done. And it took about 2 weeks to map their entire environment and show them what they look like to a hacker. And it's tremendously valuable to them. I mean, $500, like, what is that, right? So we did that. And then we still had the problem of, okay, they're coming in, but then guess what? We were in a market where they were used to buying from a new vendor every single year. They thought it was a better practice to do that than using the same company over and over. And I did not like this, nor did the rest of my team, nor did my wallet. So what we did is we changed everything and we created this predictability. Again, that piece of paper that I had on my wall that says get, and then the second one was keep. This is all part of the keep process. So how do I create recurring revenue in this professional services business? And what we did is we incentivized them through discounting on the front end to say, look, why don't you stay with us forever? And as long as you do, you'll get this discount. And then if you ever decide to leave or want to, you can. That just brings you up to that year's retail pricing. We tested it, simple test, and that thing stuck. And then once we got a client, they stay with us forever. They never want to leave. And that was, I think Perry mentioned earlier, the moat. That proposal process, the paid diagnostic process, deposit, and the secondary moat was creating these kind of forever contracts that were heavily incentivized for positive buyer behavior. Changed the business overnight. Now we're in the process of just stacking clients at thousands and thousands of dollars each, and it became a recurring revenue model like SaaS, but for a B2B professional services firm. And this is not the only firm I've done this in, but this is the one that really excited me because I was in dire straits. We were very cash strapped, and it changed everything to where we ended up with millions of dollars every year if we never took on a new client. And that just, man, it takes so much stress off of us entrepreneurs to have that in place. So I really wanted to share that with you. And hopefully, if any of you are in B2B professional services and so forth, you might find that valuable to test those things in your business. So the second part of the diagram, and I'm moving quickly. I'm sorry for all the motor mouthing, but I just want to share these things with you all because I'm so excited how much Perry has helped me and my clients. So add-on sales, we ended up adding something called honeypots. It's just a device. We tested a whole bunch of stuff, but clients didn't want it. But this is like a cyber bait car if you've ever seen the show. So you stick these devices inside someone's network, and the only way they would ever light up or make a buzz or ping is if bad guys are in moving around, because that's what we do when we get in. And it would light up if they hit something, and we would create little bait cars like, here's a list of payroll with social security numbers, Excel, XLX, document. Well, it really wasn't that. It was just a cyber bait car, a honeypot to get their attention. And like I said, they would only alert on unauthorized access. So once it lit up from a bad guy being caught, we were perceived as guardians of the galaxy, and the clients just loved us for that. And again, the whole goal is to really keep our arms around our clients, one from a trust and value perspective, but also so that they would stay as customers and continue to buy from us. So this is an example of an add-on sale, kind of expanding the pie in this particular business. We added other things later on, but this was one of the first things that we did, and it also allowed us to stay in constant contact with our clients, to constantly add value and stay on top of mind with them versus just doing our service as we would main service once a year, send some newsletters, and then they come back because the contract says they have to. And then, it's a different relationship. This allowed us to consistently add value and protect them from harm. So it was really, really cool. Surprise benefits. This is the stuff, Perry, that I know you're not single, but I'm going to flatter you because I just really love what you've done for me and my clients and how you've helped my family, and really, it's really changed quite a bit over the last 21 years. So I've been able, due to this work, it's really expanding universe theory. Everything's added on itself. Been able to speak at Stanford University about cyber, George Washington University, a giant, giant company, the largest tech company in Europe, I believe, called ASML. They make the machines that make the chips for our iPhones and Mac and all that stuff. Opal Group, Camden Wealth, and in the list, I mean, it just goes on. And it opened up the doors for me personally to at Stanford to get into an advisory board at Stanford University's engineering school. And we launched a family office initiative, and family offices, for everyone's point of view and perspective are little companies that get created when someone has a large event, like they sell their company, they exit their business. Like for example, there's a family office for the Waltons, for Steve Jobs' family, and all these folks. They created that to protect, grow, and manage their wealth. I was able to create a community inside our advisory group with hundreds of people due to this work. I would have never gotten invited in if I didn't have stories or work like this to share. It's allowed me to speak. I just spoke in Seattle as a keynote speaker at Keiretsu's investment forum. It's the largest global angel investment group in the world. And I'll just move through these because it's self-aggrandizing. But as a result of this, I got to meet the drummer from Hootie and the Blowfish and help him with his creating his keynote. I mean, just all kinds of odd things have come from this work. And like, there's my dad. I get to bring him around with me. I'm taking him tomorrow or tonight rather to Nashville to this event and celebrate the work that he and my mother have done because they did so much for us and for everyone else. And then just the relationships opened up because of Perry's teachings and helping companies grow. And I've worked in every industry you can possibly imagine, from enterprise call center software to e-commerce, games, gadgets. I was telling Perry before we got on, undeployed used airbags of all things. I mean, it's just endless. And all of this business growth stuff opened up a lot for me. And this was one that was
That's an
recently.
industry, undeployed used airbags. Man, talk about a niche.
I'm
Wow.
not going to sell one to you, Perry. But yeah, Perry, I'll quit motor mouthing. I just wanted to really share this to set the stage, but it opened up a show. My college roommate came back to me after a big stint in working with like Mondelez and Kraft, and he said, "I love how you build businesses so systematically. I want to leave this crazy giant corporate world and come do business with you again." And he came to me and said, one of my old employees went to work for LeBron's studio called Spring Hill Studios, and they want to do a show in Cleveland called Cleveland Hustles, and we're going to rejuvenate a neighborhood. And
Mm.
one of the things that was in there was a hair salon network. And I said, I'm in. So I flew up for the summer in 2016 and spent time with the crew. We had investors, local investors, similar to like the show The Profit and Shark Tank and that kind of stuff. And we filmed the show over the summer. And then, of course, that opened up a whole other career, again, expanding universe. We launched a speaking business where we did Salesforce.com's world tour in Sydney and Vegas and San Jose. We spoke all over the globe for all these giant corporations on how to grow business disruptively. I don't like the word disruption, but that's what they wanted at the time. And we just spoke all over the place. I was invited to a Michael Milken, if you remember Michael Milken from the late 80s, Perry, with the what was it, Junk Bonds or something like that?
Yeah.
There was something. So got invited to an event that was hosting a fundraiser for him in the billions as a result of all these teachings you've given me. And that opened up, expanded my universe into other things. And that's what I'm hoping to get across is if we start by bringing value to other people and continue doing that, it opens relationships that you can't even imagine because it's so rare in this world. If you can
Yes.
demonstrate value, and that person that hosted the event owns the Showtime House Billions, was the founder of Priceline amongst many other businesses. And he had a $850 million exit back in 2001. The magazine subscriptions, he turned them to become recurring like our cell phone bill, grew it into $300 million a year, sold it. And now he's pretty much just incubating and accelerating companies. We met, became instant friends, and he said, we got to hang out. So that led us next to launching into being invited. Both of us were invited to join an advisory board at Stanford Engineering School to help other entrepreneurs with the muscle of this greater family office community coming together in one place. So, as you can imagine, coming from that dirty garage where I grew up and all these apartment buildings and crazy stuff, and then getting your books, Perry, and taking the knowledge that you've given, like real practical knowledge, it just opened up. And I'll fly through this because it's just an example of what has come from where I've started to where we are today. And I want to give back to others. And that's how I spend my time, is helping other entrepreneurs. And I'll share a little bit about that. And just open book. If I can help anyone do the things I've done, I'm the best when I'm really in the service of others. as my folks have taught us. And, I keep this on my desk. That's my mother's foster mother card. And I mean it. So this is the Billions House. We host all kinds of events. This last year, that's me in the middle. I was able to bring the entire Gronkowski family, their father, Rob, back here. This is my wife, Mira, brother Dan, Gordo, the father, and Glenn, and we did a family business talk about how they're all in professional sports and are able to work together and help each other. And Rob went on to be a superstar and all this kind of family related business stuff. And that's what I spend a lot of time with these days. That's my friend Michael who owns the home. Shaquille O'Neal snuck in on us, and we had a bunch of cool stories about business and his portfolio, which you can imagine. And again, just Perry, you've opened up so much for me in your teachings. From being able to help people, I met one of my heroes, Mr. Shatner, on a podcast some years ago and got to talk to him, the Priceline negotiator of all things. And yeah, I mean, that's really it. The expanding universe theory is effective in all kinds of fronts. So going back to, when I was sitting in this little room working with no idea what to do, I never thought that I would be able to end up here. And I'm so grateful, Perry, to just be able to be of service to you and your community and help above and beyond. And I spend time right now mentoring Pharrell Williams program. It's an entrepreneurship program called Black Ambition Prize, mentoring the HBCU Grand Prize winner. Just I just want to give it forward, and I'll quit. I'll just quit there. It's just been tremendous the work that you've helped me do and help my
Wow.
clients do, Perry. And these are real testimonials from people, and I'll stop with the PowerPoint.
Well,
Thank you.
you got a few questions that people have asked. So Assad asks, is Jeremiah still getting results from Google AdWords?
Am I now? We are for outside of this particular industry, yes. So my partners were working in like Main Street businesses, so like garage door service companies, large enterprise software companies, hardware companies. Let's see, there's a bunch in there. A lot of companies in the Midwest, plumbers, HVAC, very service related businesses is the primary portfolio right now with my partners with a firm called Digital Search Pros. So yes,
And Daniel asks, please return to and expand on the forever contract principle. How did you incentivize longevity and penalize severance?
sure. Good question. So it was really incentivized to say, okay, and I'll set the stage with normally the way clients were buying, just to recap, that is in that industry, they would buy once a year, then they would go find a new vendor. And they thought that was being more secure or you're getting some better option just by selecting a different vendor. So initially, what we did, and this is what worked, is we said, look, we're going to give you a discount and we want you to stay with us. And I think the term was set at like 5 years or something like that, but it would automatically renew at the end of 5 years. And what we would do is we'd bring a percentage off the price and show that schedule where every year out they're not they're getting a sizable discount. So I don't generally like to do discounts, but I knew if we could get them and keep them for a very long time, it would be worth it. So we gave the discount and then they could also leave at any time they wanted. And all that would do is bring that year's, they would get a bill to bring that percentage back up to that year's retail price. And what the thing is, it was a little bit hard at times to get them over that hurdle of not using a different vendor. But as you can imagine, if you worked in B2B and you're working with procurement and these things, once you're in there and working with them, they just once you got over that hill, they would stay. They didn't want to leave because then it's like, well, we got to go find a new vendor, and then the price is probably going to be different. Or we know these guys and we like them. We've done reviews with them and they're nice to us. It's just easier to stay. So the whole thing was just that was almost not really a Trojan horse, but just get in the castle walls. And once we were there, we would stay by incentivizing them to stay. And there was a little bit of heartburn to leave because you would be brought back up to what a retail price would be, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
People,
I don't,
people in the
I'm
chat can chime in if you want any further elaboration. I'm curious, were there times when you were tempted to use some other radically different philosophy of marketing, or maybe went down a path
Yeah.
where you regretted it.
My whole life. No, I'm serious. Yeah, definitely tried a lot of, didn't regret it, but tried a lot of things that didn't work. Yeah, like we tried to say, hey, why don't we offer like another service they would get is something called vulnerability scanning, where it's just something they would do. A tool runs like antivirus almost, and if it found any known vulnerabilities, it would alert you. And we knew that they paid money for this, and they usually had someone. We said, we'll do it for you as a add-on bonus if you stay with us. And they're like, we don't care. Like they just didn't care about a lot of the things that we tested. It wasn't enough to get them to stay with us. And it wasn't until we had this kind of evergreen concept of incentivizing positive customer behavior by giving them this discount on the thing they're already buying. That's what we found by messing with it quite a bit. And I mean, this is over a couple of years of aggressive testing, a lot of different things, but that's the one that stuck. But a lot of other things, they just didn't care. It just that we couldn't get them to move.
What does Jeremiah do to get results from AdWords when everyone seems to be complaining and saying it's no longer useful?
Well, I guess that's a big question. What's everyone else selling? Because even in the time of running ads for cybersecurity, right? We started, it was $7 a click or something like that, and it went up to like 50, like the numbers went way up. So the thing there is if it's not working, why, Perry, you talk about this quite a bit, right? Like break it down into little pieces. Like, why is it not working? Is it like, what are you selling? How is your sales process? Is what you're selling, does it sell for enough and have enough margin in it to absorb, let's say, the costs from Google, or is it shifted so much that Google is just too expensive, you're not getting enough, and then you're not able to make it on the long tail, add-on services like we talked about here, recurring revenue models. Like that's what made this work here was having all of those things in the toolbox. But that's a good question because what I'm also hearing, now is that it's too expensive, and by the time we get a sale, we spend $100 to make $5 or something like that. But it all depends on what you're doing, right? Like what is it that you're selling, and can you fix that economic engine or not? And sometimes you just can't. Like I've given checks back to people where we've tested their industries, like a fitness product, and we couldn't make it work, so we gave their money back. It just didn't work. But high ticket, big sale, big margin, recurring revenue,
Hmm.
that you want to pick, if you can pick to be in that business, not in the other kind of business. A lot of
Well,
it's on what you do.
you just said it right there. Can you just repeat that?
I blacked out. No, I'm just kidding, Barry. Which part do
That
you want
high
me to repeat?
margin,
High margin,
continuity, re-
continuity, recurring revenue, add-on sales. Can you have additional things to sweeten the pot to add after you? So land and expand has always been our model. So we never go into things like me personally, because I'm not that good. I cannot hunt, kill, and to eat every single day. It's stressful as hell. So what you want is to, and if you don't have it, manufacture it like we did here. And it takes effort, and learn from Perry. So you want to create that recurring revenue engine, have add-on sales, test it. And all you're really trying to do is, can I get them in the door? Then can I land and expand these folks so that it does become profitable for me over time? Back in the old days, you could have run anything and it was cheap, and ads didn't cost anything. And I was there. I mean, I experienced it. We grew a IT training business in 40 cities across the country, where we'd send computers and trainers into all these hotel rooms and stuff people in there. And we were paying a few cents a click, and it just transformed the business to the point where Google did a case study on us. That formula, that landscape does not exist today. You really have to sharpen your blade. You have to be very, very, very aggressive on all of those things that we covered today, or else it's going to be a slog. It's going to be hard.
yeah. And Daniel said it sounds like he's talking about a star business. Yes, that's exactly right. Last
That's my
question.
favorite star. Yes, you introduced that to me too, and that I preach about you all the time, Perry. So if your ears are ringing, you and Richard, right?
Well, yeah, that's great. Last question, and we're done. How would you apply 80/20 thinking to a care-based business where client volume is capped and compliance limits how fast we can grow?
Mm, a care-based business, so like in-home care, I'm thinking.
Sounds like
Yeah, that's kind of it's an interesting question because oddly enough, I have a family
childcare.
member that was in that
Childcare, I guess.
childcare.
Yeah,
Yeah, so compliance caps you on how much, meaning you can only have so many, I'm assuming so many clients, children in the client care.
I guess you'll
Yeah.
have to interpret that because we don't
Yeah,
have.
I'm thinking about it. I'm running parallels because we helped this is not the same industry but similar model. We helped a company that had commercial based cleaning, so they would clean like large facilities like a Coca-Cola bottling plant or something like that, right? Very high ticket contracts. And then we had a smaller group they wanted to do in-home residential cleaning. The costs were very similar in terms of client acquisition for the industrial and commercial side of the business, but it worked because the amount of money that they would get and it created this recurring model. They could make the economics work without a lot of creativity. Moving into the residential side, which sounds like this would be like a childcare type business, it's a limited number, a fixed cost. I don't personally have experience in that space, but what I would do is go back and really break it down into all those pieces of, okay, here's my finite market. Here are the restrictions that I have from compliance. How much is it costing me to acquire a client? How long do they stay? What's the average lifetime value? And then what am I able to offer them outside of that? What do they buy before, during, and after me? Can I give them premiums? Can I add additional add-on offers to them that are within compliant means? And it's just a ton of testing that I would throw at it to see if I can even make it work, because I might not be able to, but can I apply all the tools in my box to
Mhm.
make that business work, and also look outside of my industry? What other industries have a similar makeup? They're selling different things, but what have they done to solve this particular problem, and start applying those things to the childcare business? But it would be a real like force multiplier exercise because it is tough. It's a very tough situation to be in, but it's not impossible. Other people are doing it, right?
This has been great, Jeremiah. Somebody asked, do you have any courses or anything, or if people want to get a hold of you, how would you?
I don't have anything to sell. I'm one, Perry, again, I know I keep saying this, but I'm very grateful. As you can see, all the wild craziness that I've been able to do. One thing I do like to offer is, it's just the easiest for me, is if folks want to find me on LinkedIn, because there's a messenger there and I can verify, who's who. Just talk to me. If I can help you, I will bend over backwards to try to help you. If I can't, I'll point you in the direction of people that can. I really, like I said, I want to be in the service, and I promised my mother before she passed that I would do this. So
Oh,
yeah, just reach out to me.
well, Jeremiah, congratulations, and this is so great, and it's just a reminder that even in the complexity of the whole world, if you can focus on a few principles
Hmm.
and eat the elephant one bite at a time, you can do amazing things. So,
Yeah,
Jeremiah,
and it's
thank you
thank you, Perry.
very much.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. And thank you, Kyler.
Have a great afternoon, everybody. Take
Bye
care.
bye.